The database was built in Microsoft Access, which allows for the creation of different tables which form relationships, as well as being able to export the data for statistical analysis. Here you can see an overview of the 6 tables. They each link according to a key field. So for example, every artist, address and source was designated a unique ID number to prevent duplications. This means that an artist can have multiple addresses and each address can have multiple sources. On the left panel, you can see the 6 tables. From these tables, I could then create queries which are listed below. Queries draw on specific fields to create another table, which you can then use for calculations and filters depending on your question. Table 1, Artist, holds immediate information about the artist that are unique identifiers. Table 2, Artist Address, allows for artists to have multiple addresses. Their unique ID number corresponds with the geotagging on the map. Table 3, Address Dates, allows us to track the order in which artists were at any given property and accounts for them returning to addresses on multiple occasions. Table 6, Source, does exactly what it says on the tin and was essentially for clarifying contradictions in the data. It also ensured internal validity, that someone else could replicate the same findings in the future. Let's look at an existing query. Here are the London addresses for John Constable, which I extracted for my case study. His artist ID is 105, which is linked to multiple address IDs. The address dates have been pulled through to the query, allowing me to filter in order of occupation. I then took a query further. Constable lived on Charlotte Street, Fitzrovia, twice in his career, firstly at number 63 and later at number 35. To establish the interactions with other landscape artists, I created queries for the street and the 2 separate time periods. So here, for example, we can see the other landscape artists living on Charlotte Street when Constable was living at number 35. Caution must be applied, however. This is where technical and historical knowledge is required to interpret the data. Although these artists are listed on Charlotte Street, there were numerous iterations of Charlotte Street throughout London. So if we cross-reference these artists with those actually mapped in Fitzrovia, it filters down to considerably less. I built the map using open source software QGIS. The purpose of the map is to be able to process the vast number of addresses and place them in a visual context known as a meta-image. This allows for a greater understanding of the locations of landscape artist studios and their proximity to institutions and other locations, as well as providing real-life information such as the walking time between 2 locations. Here is an overview of all of the landscape artists' addresses between 1780 and 1850. The main map source for this thesis is Richard Horwood's Plan of the Cities of London, created from 1792 to 99. Horwood's map is the earliest to list house numbers in London, thus allowing the marking of locations to be as accurate as possible for the period. The metropolis expanded exponentially between 1799 and 1850, so I overlaid B.R. Davies' 1843 map of London to create a visual parameter for the city. I also used OpenStreetMap for a 21st century perspective. Horwood's map was geo-referenced using surviving monuments and road junctions to align with the real-world map. Although the alignment is detailed, we must consider that multiple map layers which have been hand-drawn will contain elements of human error or artistic license. The maps have been digitally warped to accommodate the slight variations from the modern OpenStreetMap, so the location of a street on Horwood's map may be 50 metres west of where it is in real life, for example. On the left panel, you can see the data files. The map works in tandem with the database. Each layer of the data points can have an attribute table attached, which in my case contains a brief amount of information which corresponds with the database. For example, this is all of the addresses of female landscape artists with their attributes table, which includes their address ID and artist ID. I then imported additional information from the database, such as their names. As with the database, you can use filters to ask queries and save them as different layers. You can filter the data or select points on the map. For example, I can select using a polygon. Or I can instruct QGIS to filter the data according to the density of a population using a heat map. It was also possible to go back to the database and extract more information about the addresses and build an understanding of the relationships between the artists listed. So here are all the artists for whom it was clear they lived on Charlotte Street, Fitzrovia, whom I explore in greater detail in Chapter 2.